You know what's worse than hearing your wife say she doesn't love you anymore? Hearing her compare you to the man she used to cheat with, and realizing she's not even trying to hurt you, she's just being honest. That night, when she sneered, "My ex never made me feel this unappreciated," I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even ask her to stay. I just picked up my things, every silent second stretching like a blade across my chest, and walked out the front door. No words. No closure. Just the echo of her laughter as I left. She thought I was bluffing. She thought I'd come crawling back. She had no idea that silence would become the loudest revenge she'd ever hear. For weeks before that night, our house had turned into a museum of indifference. Every smile I offered died on her lips before it could land. Every touch felt like I was reaching through glass. She was there, but not with me. I tried, God, I tried, to bring us back. Dinners she never showed up for. Messages she left unread. Jokes that used to make her laugh now earned me an eye roll. Then came the comparisons. At first, they were subtle. "You used to surprise me more," or, "He always knew what I liked." But over time, her filter disappeared completely. One morning, while sipping coffee I made for her, she sighed, "He never made me feel this unappreciated." I remember the steam from her cup rising between us like smoke after an explosion. That was the moment something inside me died, not love, not hope, but the illusion that I still mattered. So I stood up. Calm. Cold. Packed my things. Not a suitcase, just essentials: keys, wallet, laptop, a few clothes. Enough to disappear. She didn't even look up from her phone as I zipped the bag. "Where are you going?" she asked, more annoyed than concerned. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, opened the door, and left the life I'd been bleeding for. Behind me, she laughed, like I'd thrown a tantrum. "Fine, go. Maybe he was right about you." That line echoed in my skull for days. Maybe he was right about me. Maybe he said I was too boring, too soft, too predictable. But soon, she'd see how unpredictable I could really be. The first night away was strangely peaceful. No arguing. No tension. No forced affection. Just silence and the hum of a cheap motel fridge. I thought it would hurt more. It didn't. It felt like taking off a pair of shoes 2 sizes too small. Still, my mind replayed everything. Her tone, her eyes, the casual cruelty in her voice. She'd turned me into background noise, and I realized, the only way to make her feel my absence was to give her nothing. No texts. No calls. No posts. I vanished completely. The next morning, I watched the sunrise over a cracked windowpane and whispered to myself, "Let her wonder." By the second day, her sister called. I ignored it. By the third, a message popped up. "Hey, she's asking if you're okay. Can you just text her back? She's worried." Worried? The woman who told me her ex made her feel more alive? No. She wasn't worried, she was curious. Curious why the man she could always control had suddenly gone silent. So I stayed silent. A week passed. Then 2. My phone stayed quiet, but my heart didn't. I won't lie, I missed her. The shape of her absence was everywhere: in the morning coffee I no longer made, the empty passenger seat beside me, the quiet bed. But every time I thought of going back, I remembered her smirk, her dismissal, the way she said, "My ex." And that kept me grounded. Then one night, a number I didn't recognize flashed on my screen. I picked up out of instinct. It was her sister, voice trembling. "You proved your point, okay? Now come home. She's a wreck, hasn't eaten, hasn't slept, she just keeps asking where you are." I said nothing. Not a single word. Because that's when I realized, the silence wasn't just working. It was unraveling her. Her sister kept talking, begging, pleading. She's not herself. She's breaking down. Please, just talk to her. I almost did. But then I remembered, I'd begged once too. Begged for love. For attention. For the smallest sign that she still cared. And she gave me nothing. So I hung up. The next morning, another call. Then another. Then a voice message, her voice this time. It was shaking, tired, desperate. I know I said terrible things. I didn't mean them. I just wanted to hurt you before you hurt me. Please, just come home. Please. It should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because I could hear it, the same manipulation in a softer tone. She wasn't apologizing because she missed me. She was panicking because her control was gone. And I wasn't going to give it back. I went back to the city 2 weeks later. Not home, just nearby. I wanted to see, from a distance, what silence had done. Through a mutual friend's social media, I saw her. Pale. Gaunt. Hollow-eyed. Her captions were no longer smug or flirty, just cryptic, emotional, filled with quotes about loss and regret. The same woman who mocked my kindness now posted about wanting to be loved right. She had no idea how poetic her downfall looked. I almost felt sorry. Almost. But I wasn't done yet. Because silence had made her crumble. Now, I wanted her to feel the weight of realization, that the man she rejected was the one thing keeping her sane. So I crafted a plan. Not loud. Not cruel. Precise. I didn't block her sister, I knew she'd be my messenger. I let her talk, occasionally replying with a calm, polite text. Never angry. Never emotional. Just detached. It drove them crazy. She's begging me to ask what you want. Do you still love her? She's saying she'll change. My replies were simple. I wish her the best. Tell her to take care of herself. I've moved on. Every word was a knife wrapped in velvet. Soon, she started showing up near my workplace. Not directly, but I could feel her presence. A car parked across the street. A familiar silhouette in a cafe window. Once, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in a store mirror, red eyes, shaking hands, biting her lip as if holding back tears. She didn't know I saw her. And I didn't let her see me looking back. Because I wanted her to feel invisible. Exactly the way she made me feel. After a month, her sister texted again. She says she'll do anything to fix this. She's ready to start therapy. She just wants to see you once. Therapy. The same woman who mocked the idea of emotional work was now desperate enough to try it. I waited 2 days before replying. I'll think about it. Those 4 words shattered her. How do I know? Because later that night, I got one last call from her sister, crying this time. She's sitting outside your old apartment. It's freezing. She won't leave until she sees you. I walked to the window of my new place, just a few blocks away, and saw her car parked below. Lights off. Engine running. A ghost waiting for closure. I stood there for a long time. Part of me wanted to go down. To wrap my arms around her. To end it. But the other part, the part she killed with her arrogance, whispered, not yet. So I turned off the light and let her sit in the dark. It's funny how silence can scream louder than any argument. When I left, she thought I was weak. But every day since, she's been chasing ghosts, her mind replaying every moment she dismissed. She's learning now that the absence of love hurts more than hate. That's the lesson I wanted her to feel, not revenge born of rage, but of clarity. Still, the story isn't over. Because while she's drowning in guilt, I've been preparing something that'll break her completely, the truth she never saw coming. It's time she learns that sometimes, the best revenge isn't disappearing. It's coming back stronger than she ever imagined, and letting her see what she lost forever. I told myself, over and over, that I would not be petty. That I had left to save what little dignity I had, not to punish her. That silence had been my medicine, and now that it was working, should be content to walk away and never look back. But they never teach you what to do when the person who broke you starts to break in front of you. They never warn you that part of you wants to comfort them, and another, darker part wants to sharpen what remains of your heart into a blade. I gave myself a week to breathe. 10 days to rebuild. 2 months to plot. Not out of malice at first, out of a need to make sure that when I came back, I would not be the same man she had dismissed so casually. I wanted her to realize, in a way that would not be easy to ignore, that I had been more than a convenience. I wanted her to feel the fullness of the things she'd thrown away. When I returned, I didn't come as a ghost. I didn't creep in through the back door or send passive-aggressive messages masked as concern. I assembled myself like armor, sharper clothes, a cleaner haircut, a calm that had nothing to do with apathy and everything to do with purpose. I learned how to make a face that held no plea. I learned how to sit with the ache and let it harden into something useful. Her sister continued to be my unwitting ally. She called more often now, voice hoarse from too many tears. "She's worse," she would say. "She won't eat. She's lost weight. She keeps replaying things." Each plea on that line was a brick I set aside, to use later. I answered like a man who had finally learned how to keep his hands steady, short, measured, infuriatingly indifferent. It drove them frantic. Perfect. The plan I built wasn't complicated. Complication is what people invent to mask cowardice. My revenge would be simple and surgical. Show up on the stage she thought she commanded and reveal the truth in a place where she couldn't simply swipe it away. Hurt where it would do the most damage, socially, publicly, but not destroy life or limb. I wanted her to understand loss, not to be ruined by it. There's a difference. First, I gathered evidence. Months before I left I'd noticed patterns, late-night messages, screenshots she'd left open, small receipts that didn't make sense. I'd tucked them away, assuming they were nothing. But when she called herself unappreciated, when she invoked him like a talisman, I began to look with new eyes. My curiosity turned into quiet analysis. The phone she never locked? A careless treasure trove. The cloud backups she used to keep family pictures? A mirror to secrets. I didn't show any of it to anyone. I copied, organized, and packaged. Conversations, flight itineraries, little notes about, "Meet me at the old pier," and, "Can you pick up the extra key?" I found the way she described him to friends, how she made him sound bright, daring, the antidote to my predictability. She painted him as an artist of risk. The notes revealed a different truth. He wasn't glamorous. He was convenient. He told her what she wanted to hear. He offered excuses for her cruelty, and a safe place to unload the parts of herself she'd decided to hide from me. Armed with this, I could have chosen to publish, to humiliate in the blunt way of social media shaming. Thousands of faceless eyes, the cheap kind of justice where everyone applauds and then forgets. But I wanted theater, and theater requires an audience who understands the specifics. So I picked them, the people whose opinions mattered to her, the friends who had cheered her on, the colleagues who'd envied our perfect life, the neighbor who had always looked at us with a small cardboard smile. I sent invitations the old-fashioned way, private messages and hand-sent texts to a curated list. The subject line was simple: a night to remember. Come at 7. I did not explain. The message landed like a pebble in still water, ripples formed in peculiar patterns. She called her sister into an abyss of worry. Her sister begged me to cancel. I didn't. On the day, I drove to the neighborhood where we'd once walked hand in hand. I parked 2 blocks away, so I could watch without being seen. I'd booked the small community hall, the same place where we'd celebrated birthdays, the place where life felt public and safe. I hired someone to set up a small projector and a sound system. I arranged for the pastries, the coffee, the folding chairs. Every detail was intentional. The scene would have been laughably domestic if it weren't so laden with intent. At 7, the room filled with the curious and the concerned. She walked in late, like she always did, hair damp with rain, makeup smeared from crying. She carried a coat that made her look smaller, like she was trying to hide in fabric. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on faces that once reflected her. I watched her falter as people who had sat at our table turned to look at her the way they had once looked at me, with expectation, with a peculiar hunger for the story to be mine. "Why is everyone here?" she whispered to her sister, who held onto her arm as if she were still a child who could be steadied by touch. I stepped out into the light. I didn't shout. I didn't throw any of the evidence in the air like confetti. The room was quiet with the kind of silence that's thick and full of judgment. People recognize when history is about to change. They lean forward. "Thank you all for coming," I said. My voice was steady in a way that surprised me. "I asked you here because I think some stories were told half-truths. I want to show you what those half-truths looked like." I hit play. The projector hummed to life. First came photos, images of moments she'd posted, laughing with friends, sipping coffee, the two of us on a balcony. Intercut with them were screenshots, conversations between her and him, the mundane messages that reveal the shape of an affair, plans to meet for coffee, snapshots of locations, a flippant "can't wait" that meant more than she had ever given me. The room shifted. Heads turned. Whispers licked around the chairs like a slow flame. She covered her mouth with both hands. Tears flowed freely now, but not the kind that mean regret, more like the kind that mean fear. She looked at me as if I had become a stranger who had somehow learned her secrets. Her sister rushed to her side and began to murmur apologies under her breath. I kept moving forward. Next came the audio. I had not wanted to do this. I had told myself again and again I would not reach for tools that felt like weapons. But there was a fragility in her performances, a way she had always replayed herself for others. I'd recorded a conversation months before, the way you record a lecture so you don't miss a point. In it, she spoke candidly about feeling trapped, about how he had made her feel alive, about plans they'd made to wait until the divorce papers go through. She called me predictable, like it was a crime. You could hear the room breathe in the gap between the first word and the last. People who had once nodded at her jokes now looked like they had been forged anew. There was shame in the air, but not for what I had done. For what she had been. When the last message faded, my stomach dropped in a way that felt like a release. I had wanted to dismantle the myth of her virtue, to show that she had lied about what it meant to be unhappy. I had not wanted to see her collapse. I had not known that watching would be as devastating as being dismissed. She fell to the floor then, a broken, graceless thing, and someone, a woman who had served us cake at our engagement party, rushed to help. Her sister knelt beside her and sobbed, others murmured about betrayal and loyalty, about how none of this had seemed possible. I left before anyone could stop me. Outside, the night air hit like a cold hand. I didn't go home. I sat in my car and let the city hum. I thought I would feel triumph. Instead, I felt a yawning, exhausted emptiness that draped over me like a coat too heavy to lift. The evidence had done its work. Friends would call. Mutual acquaintances would ask awkward questions. She would have to fight to explain herself or continue crumbling publicly. But under it all, the part of me that had wanted her to understand, really understand, sat alone, tired, and uncertain. For a few days after the reveal, the world became a soap opera. People whispered, messages pinged, and our social circle rearranged like tectonic plates. She called me once, voice hoarse beyond recognition. Why would you do that? She asked. I told her, truthfully, that I had wanted her to feel the same dizzy, sick desperation I'd felt the night she sneered at me. She said I had hurt her. I said so had she. Then, the twist I hadn't planned for, not the dramatic reveal that burned her social life, but something quieter and more corrosive. I began to get emails. Short, oddly formal messages from a name I didn't recognize. We should talk, they said. No signature. No context. The first came a week after the haul. I dismissed it as a vindictive stranger. The second came the next day. With it, a link. I clicked out of curiosity and found a small, private blog. Someone had assembled a mosaic of our lives, messages, pictures, and a narrative that hinted at something darker. The author implied knowledge of more than just texts. They hinted at an undercurrent of manipulation from both sides, at a pattern that made our story less black and white. Then I received a message that made my chest ache in a new way. It was from her sister. I have to tell you something, it read. Call me. Her voice over the phone trembled. I didn't know, she said. I swear to you, I didn't know the extent. I thought she was just unhappy. She paused. I found messages on my phone the other night, between her and someone else. His name, it's not the person you think. My stomach tightened. Who? She inhaled sharply. You remember the man she used to say was her ex? The one she always blamed for making her feel alive? It wasn't him. It was someone else. Someone she used to know from college. He's been in touch again. He convinced her that leaving was right. He encouraged her to push you away. The world tilted. I had built my tower of proof around the man she mentioned, around messages that made it look like she had been in love with a convenient strand of affection. But her sister's revelation suggested something different. The affair was less about a single person and more about a pattern. The ex she invoked, the one she compared me to, had been a symbol, not the architect. I thought about the messages I'd saved, the smallness of them. People lie to themselves more easily than they lie to others. She had wrapped a narrative around a messy reality to make it make sense. Her ex as a hero, me as the villain, it was a story that allowed everyone to sleep at night. This new information didn't excuse her. If anything, it complicated the cruelty. But it also changed the nature of my revenge. I had wanted her to feel lonely and raw, to understand the vacuum she'd created. But the more I learned, the more I realized the true damage was not something inflicted by a single person, it was something she had cultivated within herself, a hunger for validation external to us, a need to feel chosen by someone who was elusive. My revelation had shown her as a liar to our circle, yes, but it had not healed the emptiness that drove her to lie. It had not taught her how to face the parts of herself that chased risk over safety. There was a fork I hadn't seen before: continue the public spectacle and watch her burn slowly, or do something different, something that would force her to confront herself without the audience. My anger wanted spectacle. My better self, the man who once loved her enough to try and save us both, wanted something else, to push her to a place where she would have to reckon, privately, with who she was. So I arranged for a conversation. Not a public apology, not a plea, not a reconciliation. A conversation in a neutral place, a small cafe away from prying eyes. I told her sister I would go, and she agreed. I sat across from her, and for the first time since I left, we spoke without screens between us, without audiences, without theatrics. She was fragile. She was penitent in the way of someone who confuses weakness with depth. She told me how the other man had made her feel seen, how she had used his excitement as a salve for boredom. She admitted the cruelty. She admitted the scheming. She wept and, for the first time, said what I most wanted to hear, that she had been wrong. But there was a caveat in her apology, a plea that sounded like a weapon. I'll do anything, she said. Help me fix this. Help me make it right. Come home. Her words were honest and dishonest at once. I had built my revenge not to punish but to make her feel the gravity of consequence. Had I achieved that? Yes. Had I also shown her a mirror, pointed out the parts she'd refused to look at? Yes. But to let her come home, to fold myself back into the person who had been dismissed so flippantly, that would be to hand the power back to her. It would be to deny that silence, that absence, had been my teacher. So I told her the truth. I had no desire to rebuild what had been broken with her hands still stained by the things that broke it. But I wasn't a monster. I would not make her a spectacle forever. I would not prolong the torment to prove a point. If she wanted to change, she would have to start with herself. Therapy. Accountability. No quick returns. She looked at me like someone who had been promised a lifeline and then told it had conditions. Will you come back if I do that? She asked. I thought about the nights I had spent pretending that a future with her was possible. I thought about the small ways she had killed me and the larger ways she had refused to see herself. I told her I loved her once, but love was not a currency that could be cashed in after ruin. I could not guarantee the future. I could only guarantee that I would not be the man who begged for crumbs. She left the cafe that night with more questions than answers. I left with the knowledge that my revenge had been more than just a show, it had been a catalyst. It forced her into a corner where she could choose to face herself or keep pretending. It also, painfully, forced me to admit that revenge is never purely satisfying. It leaves residue. It asks its own price. Weeks later, I saw a photo of her on a friend's feed, gaunt, sober-faced, sitting in a circle of chairs, a therapy circle. It was not public spectacle. It was grit. It was messy and slow and not theatrical at all. It did not erase what had been done, but it promised the only thing I couldn't give her, the possibility of change. As for me, I rebuilt. I found a small apartment with sunlight that was honest and uncomplicated. I taught myself to cook again. I dated people who were quiet and curious and whose attention was not a performance. I learned the weight of boundaries and the power of choosing myself. The twist, the thing I hadn't expected, wasn't her humiliation or the public unmasking. It was this: revenge had turned into a different kind of mercy. Not mercy for her, not at first, but mercy for myself. By revealing the truth, by refusing to accept a life in which my value could be dismissed with a joke, I'd reclaimed the narrative. I hadn't ruined her beyond repair. I had simply refused to be the instrument of my own diminishment any longer. Sometimes the loudest explosions fade into the quietest resolve. She might never understand that. She might think I left because I wanted to break her. Maybe I did, in a way. But mostly I left because I wanted to find the man she had convinced himself was only predictable, and prove him wrong, by being predictably kind to myself, predictably strong in my boundaries, and predictably unwilling to accept the scraps of someone else's fervor. Months later, I ran into her at a market. For a second, the old movie played in my head, the comfortable look of a man whose life and love were taken for granted. She saw me and looked away. No tears, no pleas. Just a small, private recognition that something had been lost. I nodded once, the way we nod at monuments we don't want to make pilgrimages to, and walked on. Silence had been my weapon. Truth had been my stage. Mercy, the unexpected aftershock, became my deliverance. The revenge I'd wanted had been achieved, and in the hollow left behind, something else took root, a slow, stubborn growth of self-respect that refused to be bargained away. She would live with what she'd done. I would live with what I'd become. And somewhere in the aftermath, both of us would have to learn how to be human again, the hard way, without the scripts we used to hide behind.